More than 100 Hong Kong tourists stranded in Vietnam. Mainland visitors complain about being forced to shop in Hong Kong. And continued political uncertainty in Thailand.
Good evening. A holiday nightmare for about 200 Hong Kong tourists who got stranded in Vietnam. The organization that's supposed to receive them in Vietnam is believed to have shut down. The Hong Kong Immigration Department is contacting the Chinese embassy in Vietnam to try to help the visitors. Vicky Kung reports.
The 200 tourists set off from Hong Kong in 5 tour groups between last Thursday and Saturday. They were looking forward to a holiday in Guangxi on the mainland, followed by a tour of Ha Long Bay and Hanoi in Vietnam. But they could not contact the organization in Vietnam that was supposed to receive them over there. A spokesman for Guangdong Travel, with whom the tourists made their bookings, said one of the groups finished their trip today and was meant to return to Guangxi. But since they have not been able to find the Vietnamese agency, they didn't have the documents needed to cross the border back into China. They were left stranded at the border checkpoint for hours. Another 150 people in 4 other tour groups are still in Vietnam. Guangdong Travel is going to arrange for the return to Guangxi as soon as possible. The Vietnamese leg of the holiday, Guangdong Travel said, had been subcontracted to an agency in Zhengjiang, which they have been working with for most of last year. The travelers paid about 2,200 Hong Kong dollars for the 5-night, 6-day tour. 3 of those nights are meant to be in Vietnam, the rest on the mainland. The Immigration Department here in Hong Kong has contacted the Chinese embassy in Vietnam to try to find out what is going on. Hong Kong people who are in need of help abroad can contact the Immigration Department through its hotline 1868. Vicky Kong, TVB News.
A group of mainland tourists in Hong Kong complain that they are being forced to go shopping instead of going on activities promised in their itinerary. Their tour guide and the travel agency here in Hong Kong both claim they didn't know why the itinerary was organized that way. Jenny Lam reports.
Hanging out in the shopping area in Hong Kong, but this is not what these mainland tourists came to Hong Kong for. They each paid about 1,400 yuan for a 2-night, 3-day tour. They were promised trips to Ocean Park and Disneyland, as well as accommodation at a 3-star hotel. They were even given admission tickets to Disneyland for today, but when they arrived, they were instead given a different itinerary. That is, a visit to the promenade in Tsim Sha Tsui, followed by 9 different shopping destinations. This visitor from Qingdao complains that the tour guide warned them that if they refused to shop, they would have to pay an extra 2,000 yuan each. The guide apparently also threatened not to organize their hotel rooms and withhold their travel permits. A man who said he's the tour guide claimed he had no idea about the itinerary. The travel agency in Hong Kong, which is meant to be taking care of the tour group, admitted that they had drawn up the itinerary, but stressed that it was meant to be a suggestion for the tour guides and they did not have to stick to it. A staff member of the agency added that he didn't know why the mainland agency with whom the tourists booked their holiday did not list all the shopping destinations. If they want to go to Disneyland, then they should, said the staff member. Our company is not going to force them to do everything on the itinerary, he claimed. Joseph Tung, Executive Director of the Travel Industry Council, said today that the mainland agency must be held responsible, since they were the ones who told the tourists what to expect on the trip. He advises the visitors to complain to mainland authorities, whom he said would be very concerned if agencies there are not sticking to the rules. But he added that the Hong Kong agency will also be penalized if it is found to have changed the original itinerary. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
A day after one of the most contentious elections in its history, Thailand faces continued political uncertainty and the prospect of more turmoil. James Aiken reports.
It was a vote the government was desperate to hold and opponents never wanted to happen. And the morning after Thais went to the polls, little has changed in the divided nation. The snap election, which the main opposition party boycotted, is almost certain to return Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra to power. And that result would seem to assure continued political turmoil.
This is all very new to Thailand and to us. And I think the future is for uncertainties, more uncertainties facing Thailand after this general election.
The country's election commission says voting at most polling stations was peaceful, with disruptions in about 20% of constituencies. Official results cannot be announced until a series of by-elections are held over the next several weeks and all districts have voted. For now, that means Yingluck will remain a caretaker prime minister with no policy authority. But many question if the snap election she called has left an already divided country even more divided.
Even right now, we can't close all the number of the member of the parliament. But anyway, at least we can show some sign that people would like to see election, would like to continue on the democratic process.
Aside from consolidating some protest camps, the status quo also remains for demonstrators. Protest leaders like Suthep Thakksuban are assuring supporters that Yingluck's ruling party can't win enough seats to open parliament, even if by-elections go ahead. Observers say the new government will have to face the prospect of months of paralysis, protests, and complex legal challenges.
We will have to live with what they call the political instability, given the polarization. Regarding of what the government could run or not, I expect the government for the future will be at best a lame duck government.
James Aiken, TVB News.
A prominent Ukrainian opposition activist who was allegedly abducted and tortured has been allowed to leave a Kiev hospital to receive treatment abroad. Dmytro Bulatov went missing on January 22nd and resurfaced a week later, heavily bruised and with part of an ear cut off. The incident, along with the beatings of other activists, one of whom died, is raising fears that government supporters are hiring thugs to intimidate the opposition. Anti-government protesters in Kiev's Independence Square say they are grateful to the international community for helping Bulatov. Meanwhile, Ukraine's president is back on the job today. After a short sick leave, it was thought Viktor Yanukovych was disappearing from the limelight in preparation for imposing a state of emergency in Ukraine. His office said he had an acute respiratory illness. On Tuesday, Parliament is expected to consider reforms to the Constitution that would reduce some presidential powers. Terror today at a Moscow high school. Police say a student shot a teacher and a police officer dead and held more than 20 other students hostage in a classroom before he was disarmed and detained. The attack comes just days before Russia hosts the Winter Olympics in Sochi. Police say the attacker entered his school in northern Moscow carrying a rifle and held students and a teacher hostage in a biology classroom. Reports say the attacker initially shot one officer and then opened fire at others who arrived at the scene. The shooting sent dozens of students scrambling out of the school while a police helicopter landed in a nearby field.
To Japan now, where the mayor of Osaka, Toru Hashimoto, abruptly resigned today to gain public support for his political plan of creating a so-called Osaka metropolitan government. Hashimoto, who is also co-leader of the opposition Japan Restoration Party, says he quit so he can run for early mayoral elections. In doing so, he hopes to polish his blueprint that calls for creating a new metropolitan government by April of next year, one that will be on par with the status that Tokyo enjoys, one that will also eliminate unnecessary administrative work and provide better services to the people. But his plans have taken a turn for the worse. Hashimoto insists the local assembly is purposely delaying his idea because they're against it. The next mayoral election will likely take place in March.
Japan is blaming environmental activist Sea Shepherd for a collision between a whaling vessel and a boat belonging to the protest group in the remote seas off Antarctica. No one was injured, but there was minor damage to both ships in the latest drama between the conservationists and the whalers. The Tokyo-based group, which supports the annual whale hunt, released a video of Sunday's high seas collision. Sea Shepherd, which each year tries to harass the whaling fleet into ending its hunt, said they were the victims of a lengthy attack by the whalers. The Japanese government is demanding from the Netherlands, where the ship is registered, that proper measures be taken. Japan is allowed to hunt whales for scientific purposes under an exception to a 1986 ban on whaling. Critics say the program is a cover for commercial whaling.
And still to come in our newscast, Oscar-winning actor Philip Seymour Hoffman found dead in New York. A local woman who was given the wrong heart and transplant operation dies, and an exercise program to help patients with depression.